Hello and welcome back to part 6 of how to make a HexTile board game in Unreal Engine 4. This will also work for Unreal Engine 5. Um, in our last video, we got to the point where we could select units, and this does work across both server and client. So the client can see the server selecting units and moving them, or not moving them yet, but at least selecting them, and vice versa. So what we want to work on next here is starting to set up our movement to different tiles. So in this video, we're going to focus on actually indicating which are the adjacent tiles, just so it's easy for the player to see. So let's hop right into that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come into our BP Pawn Unit Master, and we're going to add in a couple things. So we made this event that when you click on the pawn, run this series of things, and if the unit is not selected, we run the select unit server. So the first thing I want to do is I want to add in a new variable, and this will be our PC turn-based, and we'll just call this PC, so the player controller, so who is doing this. And we'll bring that off this cast and pass that through and pretty it up a little bit. Okay. And then what we want to do is we're going to run a couple different events. So let's give ourselves a little bit more room. So we're going to go back to our player controller, and we're going to make a new event. Let's see, what would be a good place. Let's just kind of go in the middle. So custom event. And wait, I want to see. Yes, we have our selected unit. Where is that? Add selected unit. Okay. So this one is going to be add selected tile from. So this is just going to make sure that the player controller knows which tile they're selecting from. And then we'll do some additional logic off of that later. We'll run this on the server, make this reliable. And what we're going to pass through here will be our BP HexTile object reference, and let's call this selected tile from, and we will make this a variable. So just right click, come up to variable, and then we're going to want to do two things. So now we have a reference to the tile, or we will, but we have it in our player controller. And what we want to do from here now is actually get the adjacent tiles. So to do that, what I found the easiest way to actually do this is, here's what our tile looks like, right? We want to know which tiles are around this. And so I think the best way to actually do this is just do a collision sphere. So click add component, collision, sphere collision. And we'll just call this adjacent collision sphere. File save. And now with this, let's scale this up, see what 10 looks like. Might bring this down a little bit, maybe 9. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to get any tile that is within this sphere. So you don't want it so big that, it's going to be, if it's this tile, right, you don't want it so big that it's overlapping with these. So just big enough that it's going across the outside of the tile. So I think this will work. And then what we're going to do is make a custom event within our tile. So custom event. And let me grab this quick. So I'll call this custom event get adjacent tiles. And from here, we'll drag in our adjacent collision sphere. If I could spell this right, adjacent. Adjacent, I think that's right. If not, not a big deal, obviously. So pull off this one, type in get overlapping actors. And then we're going to filter out a class and look for BP HexTile. So this is going to get anything within the sphere that is the HexTile. We'll run a for each loop. And from here, we'll pull off this. And we're going to do a not equal. And then right click and get a reference to self. So this will return this individual tile within the overlap, which that's what we're filtering out now. So we don't want a reference to ourselves because this individual tile obviously isn't adjacent. So we just want anything that's not ourselves and within the collision sphere. And then from there, cast to BP HexTile. Okay. And then we're going to create a new variable and call this adjacent tiles. BP HexTile. We're going to make this an array. And let me just, I think, yeah, we probably do want this to be replicated. And for the event, let's make this run on the server and reliable. Okay, now let's pull this, get it, and we will do add. And plug this in. So, right, most tiles, if you think about this one, will be overlapping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so we'll run that as a for each, grab all 6, filter out ourselves, and then we'll add that into this variable. Okay, so let's go back into our BP unit master. So run the selected, add selected unit. Or where do we want this? Okay, so with our owning PC reference, let me just drag this off here to keep it clean. Come off this and type in add selected unit tile from. So this is that event we just created in our player controller. I'm going to just give myself a little bit more space so it doesn't look so clustered. And we'll pull in our owning tile, plug that here. And so now we just made this event in our player controller. So we're now passing through the tile that the unit belongs to, so that'll be our from tile, set that as a reference. And then off of that tile, we'll run our get adjacent tiles event. And then we'll also get adjacent tiles. No, what do we call that? Adjacent tiles. Get adjacent tiles. There. We want this variable reference. And then we're just going to make this a variable within here too, just so we can interact with it. But we'll call it adjacent tiles from. So now when this runs, we'll know which, and maybe I'll do, I'll just demonstrate this quick with a print string. So let me just get this down to 1. So when we select the unit, right, it's running all of the adjacent tiles. So as you can see, we're getting 6 back, which makes sense for this tile. We have 6 around it. Then what we want to do next is actually add in a visual indicator to the player. So come back into our unit master. So after we add that tile to the player controller, we're going to do another custom event. Let's just put that down here. We'll call this toggle adjacent tiles. And I'm going to put underscore client. So this will only run on the owning client, will be reliable. So this means that only the player that is actually doing this action will see this visual indicator, which I think makes more sense versus everybody seeing where somebody's thinking about moving to. So everybody will see the action, um, but not kind of what the other player is thinking, if that makes sense. And then a variable on off. And then from here, we'll get a reference to our owning tile. And I'm just going to make this a validated get. So if it's invalid, we won't uncode. Shouldn't be a problem, but I think that's just good practice. And from here, we'll run an event off of this. So we got to go back into our HexTile. And let's go right below our get adjacent tiles, custom event. Toggle adjacent tiles. And again, we can make this, actually, I don't think we have to replicate this because we'll be running this from the owning client on the unit, so this should be fine. But we're going to do two things. Add in a Boolean for on off. Then we'll add in one more, which will be an integer, and it will be the player index. And then we'll do a branch for on off. And grab our adjacent tiles. And we're going to do 2 for each loops. Okay. And then we need to make 2 more custom events. Turn on decal. Turn off decal. So if we want to toggle the adjacent tiles, if that is true, then we'll do the turn on decal. Pass that through. And if not, we'll do the turn off decal. And both of these need an integer, player index. And then we can pass this through for both. Get a little OCD with trying to make things look good, but I think it's worth it. Perfect. Okay. And we'll build this out a little bit more, but we'll have to come back to it here in a bit. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a variable. Let's call this adjacent displayed question mark and make this a Boolean and a single variable, not an array. So turn on decal, bring in this Boolean, and we'll do a check. So if this is true, meaning we're already displaying the adjacent indicator, then we don't want to do anything. So we only want to do this if this is false. So if this is false, then we'll run line code. We'll set this to true. And we're going to make another variable called adjacent tile color. And this will be a material instance, which we'll create that here in a bit. So we'll set this and do one more. So make another variable and we'll call this adjacent tile color array. And this will be a material instance still, but this one will be an array. Pull this in and we'll come off this and type in get. Connect this here, and then this player index to here. So what this is going to do, we're going to create the materials here, but depending on your player index, that'll have a corresponding material in here, right? So we'll have 4 different ones. And then we'll get the appropriate one for the player index, and that's how we'll set the color, right? Since we have blue, red, green, and yellow, gold, those will be the four colors we'll make. And the last thing I want to do here quick is off of this turn off decal. So we can copy this. But in this case, we only want to run this code if we already have it toggled. So then we will turn it off. And that's all we can do for right now. Because we actually need to create the indicator, so what that'll look like, and then the materials. So the way I'm doing it for my game, and I think we did this in a previous video, but this is just a sphere, so I'll recreate this super quick. And you can do whatever you want. Maybe you want to do a exclamation point or a square, whatever you want. So here's a sphere, and this is in Blender. I'm just going to scale this down a little bit. But you can simply then go in edit mode and select the top and bottom faces, delete those faces, and now you have this circle, and you can kind of scale this up a little bit, right? And you just have something like this. So here's mine, and then all you'll do is just file, export, FBX, say that wherever you want, and then bring that into the engine. So this is what mine looks like in engine, and then I put it in assets. So simply just a circle, and you can't see the back because it's a plane, so it only has one visibility, but we can correct that in the material. So bring in that or whatever you want for your indicator, and then from there you can do whatever you want with it. And then where we're keeping this, unless we have materials, let's see, assets, materials, maybe I'll put it in here. So create a new material, call this matte tile adjacent master. So we'll have some material instances off of this. And we'll do, let's see, I need this to be translucent, and we'll make it two-sided. And let's see if there's any other settings. I think that'll be good. So hold 3 and click, or you can just get a constant 3 vector. Same thing. And plug that in. I'll just make the default white. And then we'll create some instances again with the different colors. Hold 1 and click for a single constant. And we will right click, create a parameter. And this will be opacity. And I'm going to do the same with our color. So convert to parameter. Let's call this color. And our default opacity, let's do 0.8. And then I'll show you what this will kind of look like. So this is my other project. I'm just going to do a couple things here quick. So when you're selecting unit to move, right, I like how it kind of bounces. So that's what we're going to do. And for blue, it's blue, and for red, it'll be red. So to do that within our material, right click and type in time. Then from here, we'll do a multiply, and our B will be a -1. And then we'll do an add. Put that in here. And right click, local position. Pull out this and do a mask. Or do we have to do right click mask? Which one are you? Mask component mask? Yes. Yeah, okay. So type in mask component. So it'll be this component mask. And You can play around with this, but basically this kind of sets the direction it moves. So for us, I just want it going up and down, so it's going to do B. But maybe we'll play around with that, and I can just kind of show you what that does a little bit more. And then we'll plug that mask into our add. Come off this and do a sign. I think I need a little bit more space. And then a multiply. And down here, right click, offset height. Oh no, this is a parameter. Sorry. Hold 3, bring in a 3 vector, create a parameter. I'll call this offset height. Okay. And then what I found worked the best, pull this up, double click. For the blue, 0.4, alpha 1, that's fine, 240, 1.4. So have some settings like this. Basically, you just got to put 0.4 for the blue. And we'll pass this here. And let me just drag this kind of out of the way. I'll do one more multiply. This will multiply in here. And this mask will pull into this multiply. And then all of this will plug into the world position offset. So you can see right now, right, there's some things happening. And when we come into our static mesh, drag this on, it should be looking something like this. So kind of bouncing up and down. So we'll come back into our master, right click, we'll do a material instance. Then I'll call this blue, duplicate, red, duplicate, green, and duplicate yellow. I'm going to open all of these up. Okay, so for our yellow, click this and make that a nice yellow. Save and close. For the red, click this. Make this, kind of make it like a pink, red pink. Same thing for green, kind of like the darker green, something like that. And then for blue, go something like that. Obviously you can do whatever you want for your colors. Perfect. And I think we can close both of those. And I'm going to leave this up for now. Actually, I'm going to reopen this just so I can get back to it if I need to. Okay, so now let's go into our HexTile and then our adjacent colors. So what we want to do, right, is, if you remember, the first player that joins is player index 0. The second player that joins is 1, third is 2, fourth is 3. So we want those colors to match up really across the board. So what I'm going to do is my first player will always be blue. So I'm going to drag that in. Second player will be red. Third player green. And player 4 is yellow. So drop those in. So now when we turn on the decal, we'll set the color to the correct color. And then what we need to do is go into our viewport. We will make a static mesh, or add that component. Let's call this the adjacent indicator. And this will be our adjacent tile indicator circle. That's what I called mine. And then you can kind of scale this to however you want. All right, in Blender, I kind of set the scale I wanted, but you can tweak that within Engine. And by default, in the details, visible, we're going to uncheck that. So this won't be visible by default. But when we turn on the decal, that's where we're going to set that. So we drag this in. So we'll set the color we want from the appropriate array. Come off this and set material. and that will be this. And we'll get this again and set the visibility, and we'll set this to true. And then for when we turn it off, just grab this, paste it down here, just turn off the visibility. Okay, I think this should work. Let's give it a go. No, I'm not running an event. Let me debug this. I'll be right back. Okay, figured out what we forgot to do. So come into your BP Pawn Unit Master. So we made this custom event, toggle adjacent tiles client, but we never actually called it, and we didn't finish building it. So off of off of your select unit server, let me do something actually different here too. We should get rid of these references and pass this through. Should be the same effect, but this might be cleaner if there's some other things you want me to do, that it's actually the, and just make sure it's the player controller that's selecting it versus the owner, which most of the time they will likely be the same except when you're attacking. So we'll do that. And then off of here, our toggle adjacent, what do we call that? Toggle, I didn't spell it right. There we go. Toggle adjacent tiles clients. And from here, we want this to be true. Okay. And all we are going to do off of here, this is for the tile, will be toggle adjacent tiles. Pass this through, and then we'll get our owning player index and pass that through. And then that will run these events, turn on and off. So moment of truth, boom. And let's make sure it runs for the client. Not running for the client, but it is for the server. And the server, client can't see the server and vice versa, so that's good. But this, oh, why didn't that work the first time? Weird. I'll debug that, I think, in the next video. There's one more thing I want to do, though. When we deselect the unit, we then want to turn that off. So let me pull that up quick. Deselect unit. So the setup right now in the BP pawn is when we click on a unit that's already selected. So if they're already selected true, running this code, unselect unit server, and then this remove unselected unit runs to the player controller and removes it from the array of the units we have selected, right? What I want to do from here is, if we don't have any more units selected, then we want to turn off the adjacent tiles. So to do that, let's get our selected unit array, and we'll get the length. And if this length is equal to 0, so after we remove this unit, if there's no units left in this array, so we don't have any other units selected, is basically what that's doing, or checking, then we'll turn it off. But if not, because you can select multiple units, right? So I don't want to turn it off the adjacent if I deselect this guy but still have this one selected. I only want it to turn off if I have all of my selected units unselected. So that's what this logic will check for. And so if this is true, we are going to create a new variable. Let's call this unit selected, question mark. So set this, and we'll make that false. And then we will get our selected tile from Again, I'll do a validated get. And if that is valid, we'll toggle adjacent. I think it's this one. Yes. And then we'll want that to be off. Okay, so now let's try this with the server. Good. We have both of these selected. Unselect this. It's still on. And it's off. Perfect. All right, I'm going to try to figure out what the deal with the client is. I'll come back with that, clean that up, and then that'll probably be it for this video. Okay, so figured out the problem, actually a couple problems, and it's some replication and then some timing issues. So when we select a unit, we run this event that adds the tile we're selecting from to the player controller, and then from there we're running the get adjacent tiles, which gets all the tiles that are adjacent, and then we pass that through to the player controller running on the server, and we need to make sure that this is replicated. The other things we need to make sure replicated are the unit selected, Boolean, make sure that's replicated, and our tile from selecting should be replicated. But what's happening is we run that logic on the player controller on the server, replicates to the client. That's good. But we immediately run this event to toggle that on or off. And what was happening is this event is running before the server is setting this variable here on the server, replicating to the client. So when the client is running this the first time, the client doesn't know. So because it just hasn't replicated through yet. It's just a little bit of a timing issue. So what I'm doing for a workaround is I've just added this delay of 0.3 seconds. So what that does then is it just gives a little bit of time for the client to replicate it. I think we probably go down to 0.2 to replicate that information from the server to the client. And then this will run appropriately. So when we pull this up, now when you click on as the client, right, this shows up well. But there's now another problem with replicated variables that it's not coming off. The server should still be working well. So the problem with the client not turning anything off is we have these variables which I set to run on owning client, turn on and off decal within the HexTile, but we're setting variables, and so when we turn on a decal, right, we want this to be set to true, and then when this turn off decal logic happens, it should be checking is it true, and if it is, set to false and turn off. What's happening is our default is off, which is correct, but because this is being set on the client, it's not translating over to here because these are both running on the client because the server doesn't know. So what I think the best way to do this would be is we're going to make a turn on decal. Actually, you know what? I don't even think we have to get that complicated. I'm just going to skip this check. Because this is only running on the client anyways, I don't think we'll really ever have a problem of being redundant. And if we are being redundant, all it's doing is just setting this true, and if it's already true, it doesn't change anything. So I think we can just simplify this, get rid of the branches, and that'll make life a little bit easier. So now this should work. Select, see, deselect, but it's not. Why aren't you? Okay, got it fixed. So all I did is on the turn off decal, instead of having this run on the client, I'm having this run as a multicast reliable, and that fixes it. I think it's just, I don't know, something with replication. Or replication, it is confusing. But now we can see, right, we have this guy selected, all the adjacent tiles, unselect them. The client can't necessarily, or can't see that at all. Same for client, click, we can see, server can't see it. Right on client, deselect, goes away. So that is working. What we're going to do next, the next video, is clean up some of our selecting units, because right now you can select these units and this unit, which when I do some logic that if they're not on the same tile, these two would automatically deselect. And you can see there's kind of some bugs, obviously now, but we'll be able to clean that up. And then we'll actually work on selecting this unit, and then you can move to an adjacent tile. And then from there, we can get more into some of the gameplay and attacks and things like that. So yeah, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to help you out. Thanks.